We're down to the last few weeks of our series in Colossians, verse by verse. In fact, we've got, I think, 3 or just 4 more messages left. In this particular message, we're going to talk about the concept of putting off and putting on. It seems rather normal to us. I mean, we put off and we put on every single day. We put on clothes that we like. We put on clothes that we dislike. But let's be honest, there's some of us out there, we put on clothes based on how we feel. Right? You're going, no. Yes, you do. Guys, you wear a large shirt, but you've got that extra large shirt in the drawer when you feel a little puffy one day. Right, see? You wear clothes based on how you feel. And when you're feeling just a little bit puffy, not so much here or here, but right here. Ladies, you never do that because I'm not going to touch that one. No. But we put off and we put on. But let's be fair, it doesn't really change what's underneath. I've debated all week about giving this illustration. So here we go. Now, before I give the illustration, I have to tell you, I grew up, from some of you in the same time of life, for others of you, I grew up in a different time of life. It doesn't mean I'm old. It just means I had a way better childhood than you. So I'm going to say some things that we did, but it doesn't mean you do them today, because you're not supposed to drink out of a garden hose, but we did that all the time. You're not supposed to chase the ice cream truck, but we did that all the time. And some of you right now are wondering what an ice cream truck is. See, this is why my childhood was better. But I was at a friend's house and we were playing. I was a teenager. And we were playing and we had his little brother there. I forget what was going on. And we took his little brother's toy gun. And we were playing with the toy gun back and forth. We were pointing at each other. And when somebody would say something stupid, we'd pop the gun. It was a little pop gun. So you're not supposed to do that. Yeah, I know. Remember the part of the story where I started? Right. So we were doing it to each other back and forth. We thought it was funny. And then my other friend rode by on a bike. And so I ran out to my other friend and ran off the porch and I was going to shoot the toy gun at him because he said something funny or did something funny. And when I did, I ran over to him. He saw me and screamed and fell off of his bike. Started pedaling backwards and said, no. And then I realized something. I had no idea who that kid was. Like, I had a plan and it really fell apart. He said, that was really stupid. Yeah, I know, but I was smart enough to realize that I was probably in trouble. I just didn't know by who. So I did the most logical thing a teenager could possibly do, being afraid of somebody's parents, the police, anybody. I went home and changed my clothes. Like, that's just gonna fix everything. Because if I change my clothes, nobody's ever gonna recognize me. But here's the thing. Just the fact that I changed my clothes didn't change what I had done. It didn't change my circumstances. It didn't make anything better, or even for that matter, worse. I still did what I did. I was what I was. See, a lot of times the concept of putting off and putting on for us in our mindset simply becomes an exterior thing. Something that we do on the outside. But it's not the process of simply changing the outside. It's a change of the inside. See, a lot of times we think of putting off and putting on and we think, oh, I'm going to stop the process of doing bad things and I'm going to start the process of doing good things. A lot of times we walk the Christian life and we think, oh, I'm going to take my energy of doing bad things and I'm going to stop all of that and I'm going to revert that energy and use it in a way to do good things or to do positive things. And when we do this, we end up with an outside that looks one way but an inside that remains unchanged. And it's the inside that's the problem. So throughout the entire message today, we're going to be talking about the putting off and the putting on, but it's the inside. It's not just what everybody sees. It's not just what everybody experiences. No, it's what people don't see. It's what people don't know. A lot of times we end up with changed behavior and an unchanged motive. We end up with changed actions, but an unchanged heart. See, putting off is metaphorically recognizing that I am dead to myself. And putting on is recognizing that my life, as we said a couple of weeks ago, is in Christ. And it's Christ that does that work in me. And now with that contrast, with that understanding, let's talk about what today's message really comes down to. In verse number 12 of chapter number 3, it says this: as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. I want you to catch there's 5 nouns there: compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. They're probably set in contrast to the 5 sins that we saw earlier in verse number 5 and the other 5 sins that we saw in verse number 8. But before we look at these qualities and we really dive into them, first, all these character qualities are modeled in Jesus Christ. Second, every Christian should have these character qualities that we just read. It's not optional. It's not, oh, you know what? Well, I'm going to be compassionate today, but I'm not going to be kind today. I'm not going to be humble about my compassionate heart or my kindness. I'm going to be prideful about it. No, we don't get to be gentle and patient without being kind. These aren't based on your personality. They're not based on your choices or what you want to do. It's not a multiple choice. We don't get to pick some and ignore the others. So let's look at each of these. The first one is this: compassion. We ought to treat others with compassion. The closest English equivalent is what we mean when we say heart. So this phrase, a heart of compassion, it captures the idea. The main thing to grasp is that this is an emotional term. It means to be touched by the needs of people so that we respond with appropriate action to help. Jesus used this word when he described the Good Samaritan. Now you got to remember, if you don't know the passage, I'll kind of give you a light explanation. Samaritans and Jews hated each other. They were prejudiced towards each other. And so the Samaritan walking by sees this Jew in need. And the Bible says that he had compassion that broke down all of the racial barriers, that broke down all the prejudices, that broke down the hatred that came between the two of them. In Luke chapter number 15, the Bible talks about the prodigal son, where the son says to his father before he's dead, hey, I can't wait for you to die. Give me my inheritance now. So the father divides his living, and the son takes his inheritance and runs out and spends it on sinful living. And finally, he comes back just begging to be a servant, just begging to be one of the servants of his father. And his father sees him and has compassion on him. That's the concept of this word. Compassion ought to be the motivator for what we do. Compassion is not something that we simply do. It's the motivation for all that we do. Look at the next word, kindness. We should treat others with kindness. To be kind means to be free from all which is harsh, rough, and bitter. The word here was used to describe something in a different passage of scripture in Luke chapter 5. It was described wine that was mellow, that it didn't bite, that it wasn't bitter, and it didn't leave a harsh taste. A kind person isn't demanding or pushy. They give room for the imperfections of others without criticizing them. Humility. It's often said that if you think you're humble, you're not. This is neither helpful nor correct. It's not helpful because how can I obey the command to be humble if I can't know when I'm actually humble? See, humility doesn't mean that when someone pays us a compliment, we look down and we say, oh no, I really didn't do that, or it wasn't much. No, humility isn't dumping on yourself. Literally, the Greek word means this: lowliness of mind. So let me give you a few thoughts about humility. The first one's this: a humble person is a Christ-sufficient person, not self-sufficient. A humble person consciously relies on the Lord and recognizes that God has given them everything they have. They know they're weak in themselves, but they also know they're strong in God's grace. Second, a humble person has a proper evaluation of themselves. A humble person doesn't think they're indispensable in God's plan, nor do they think so lowly of themselves that they neglect the gifts that God has given them to use. No. These things seem to contradict each other, and the key is to find your value in Christ. It's not to say that you have no value, and it's not to say that you have value in and of yourself. It's to realize that your value exists because of who Jesus is. And the third thing about humility, the humble person esteems others better than themselves. Back to the verse, the next word is this: gentleness. It doesn't mean mild-mannered. It doesn't mean weak. It doesn't mean passive. No, it has the idea of strength under submission. It was used in the classical Greek era of training animals, which were strong and powerful, but totally submissive to the master. The gentle person isn't self-willed, but surrendered to do God's will. Patience. The Greek word for patience, I love this. It literally means long-tempered. And you say, oh, I'm really good at this one, Pastor Anthony. I got this one figured out. Said no one that was ever honest. No, because what we end up saying is, I have patience. I hold all my anger, my frustration. I hold all of my rude and crude words on the inside, and I just smile on the outside. That doesn't mean you're patient. That just means you're faking it in the moment. It's the opposite of having a short fuse. This means to be tolerant of imperfections, of differences, of faults in others. The patient person gives others time to change and time to make mistakes in the process. The patient person cares more about the development of others than how they're inconvenienced. Look at verse number 13. Bearing with one another and forgiving each other. Whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Now I want you to catch something. These two verses number 12 and verses number 13, they're connected. See, it's not adding to the list. We would read this and we would go, okay, well, I have to be compassionate and kind and humble and gentle and patient. Now I also have to bear with one another and forgive each other. No, that's not the context here. The context is we're supposed to be compassionate, kind, humble, gentle, patient. And the way in which we do this, we see it in verse number 13, is bearing with one another. And the way in which we do those things is forgiving each other. I want you to see the perspective of this. We've received all these things because of who Jesus is. And now his Spirit dwells in you, it dwells in me, and he wants us to live these things out. He wants us to be kind, to be gentle, to be humble, to be patient. He wants his Spirit that's in us, that should be changing us from the inside out, to work out of us. And the way it works out of us is bearing with one another and forgiving one another. Bearing with one another, we should treat others with forbearance. This means putting up with someone's faults and idiosyncrasies. It's kind of hard to do, isn't it? I mean, for some of us, we have a way of doing things. And it's not just that, your way is wrong and my way is right. It's that my way is the only way. Come on, there's some of you out there, I know you're there. Our way is the only way of doing something. And we get so fixated on our way and what we think. But just because we do things a certain way doesn't mean that everyone else has to do it our way. And when everybody has to conform to us, we're not bearing with one another. No, bearing with one another is realizing that people are more important than what I prefer, than how I feel. Look at forgiveness. We should treat others with forgiveness. Rather than holding a grudge and harboring bitterness and resentment, we're supposed to give. We're supposed to give forgiveness. But there's a way in which we're to forgive. It says we're to forgive just as the Lord has forgiven you. The Greek word here used for forgiveness has the nuance of undeserved favor. Because everyone I've ever talked to that struggled to forgive, they've always said, yeah, well, I would forgive them, but they don't deserve forgiveness. I mean, that's our big hang up, that we're going to hold the balance and we're going to decide whether someone deserves our forgiveness or not. And here in this verse, we're commanded to forgive just as God has forgiven us when we were dead in our trespasses and sins, when we were lost without hope. He forgave us and we didn't deserve it. This is how we're supposed to forgive. This is why forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's not a feeling that comes over you and makes you feel like you're capable of doing something. No, it's primarily a decision that is made over and over and over and over again. Look at the last verse. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. See, love isn't optional. It's not optional, nor is it a minor command for believers. There's at least 55 direct commandments in the New Testament telling us to love one another, plus many other exhortations to practice loving qualities like compassion, kindness, and patience. And to obey the command to love one another, we've got to understand what biblical love means. See, our English love for word is extremely generic here. Like, we think of love and there's so many different things. But this word has a very specific meaning. The love that we're talking about here is a self-sacrificing, caring commitment, which shows itself in seeking the highest good for the one that is loved. And the core of love is not emotion, but commitment. It's not a commitment to make the other person immediately happy, but rather to seek the person's highest good. Biblical love is also self-sacrificing. To love another person means that you lay aside all your desires, your comforts, by doing unto them what you would want done for you. by doing what's best for them the same way you would want someone to do what's best for you. The best way for me to describe this is the love that a parent has for a child, that they literally just want what's best for them. Biblical love, it's also caring. This is the emotional side. Biblical love is the basis for mature Christian unity. Some commentators think that when Paul calls love the perfect bond of unity, that he means that love binds or ties into all of the virtues mentioned in verse number 12 and in verse number 13. Put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, all while bearing with one another and forgiving each other. See, when love rules in our lives, it unites all these spiritual virtues so that there is this beauty and harmony indicating spiritual maturity. This harmony and maturity, it's keeping the life balanced and growing in the Christian faith. And the philosophies of the false teachers, all of the rules and the legalism of the false teachers, it could never produce this kind of love. That's what separates it completely and utterly and entirely. And Paul is then coming back again and doubling down on his statement. What the false teachers were teaching, it didn't lead to loving. It led to being harsh with your brother, hyper separating from your brother, being difficult with your brother or sister in Christ. And while we've got to hold to some fundamental doctrines, we look around us and we see the world changing. We say, oh, we have to hold to the truth. You're right. But at the same time, we need to remember that love is the fundamental practice of the truth. So if you have all of your doctrinal parts all lined up, if you have your doctrinal ducks in a row, but you don't love, I'm pretty sure Jesus talked about that. I'm pretty sure the Apostle Paul, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, said something about that in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That if you don't have love, what are you? See, we're really good at saying, oh, I'm right, and I've got all these positions, and I've got all of my ideas, and I know what's right, and I know what's wrong. And our disposition is horrible. Hey, if you're right in your positions and you're wrong in your disposition, you're still wrong. Yeah, we've got to hold to truth. We've got to stand firm, but we also have to love at the exact same time because that's part of the truth. And when you try and separate those things, you're just like the false teachers. Say, well, who would do that? No one would do that intentionally. But when we start hyper-focusing on performance, when we start hyper-focusing on how separate we're going to be from other people because we don't like something that's some small little nuance that you can't find in Scripture, it's eventually going to affect how we love people. So you might say, Anthony, how do we live these verses? How do we live out this truth? How do we put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience? And how do we do that with bearing one another and forgiving each other? Let me give you a few ways to live this out. The first one is this: you've got to be real. Now, there's some of you right now, you're going, oh, I can be real. I'm really good at being real. Being real doesn't mean that you can be ungodly and call it real. Being real doesn't mean that you're rude. It doesn't mean that you take the natural man, the old flesh, the old life, and how it responds and how it treats people and call it real. I was pastoring a church at one point, not this church, I was pastoring a different church, and I was there maybe 2 weeks, and I thought I was going to have a honeymoon period for like a year or so, and I think my honeymoon period lasted like 2 weeks. And there were some people within the church, and they were with outside the church, and they were trying to split the church, and they were trying to cause difficulty. And one of them was sadly the previous pastor. He was trying to cause some difficulty. While I'm on that, Pastor Ken, thanks for just being the best encouragement. Like, honestly, the best guy. I was texting somebody last night, and I was just bragging about you. You're my biggest cheerleader. Even if any of you guys don't like me, he likes me. Why? I have no idea. But anyway, but they were trying to split the church, and we had made it like a year and a half in. And I was just getting tired. And I started thinking, you know what? If I just left, it would all stop. The church could call a new pastor. He could take over, and the whole thing would just be okay. And so I got one of my leaders in the church, and in fact, he's here today, and we were sitting in my truck together, and we were talking. And I said, listen, here's what we're gonna do, and in order for this just to work, I'm gonna leave, and then you guys find somebody, and everything will just be normal. And he looked at me, he said, okay, are you done now? I said, yeah. He said, okay. He said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard you say. And then he went further than that. He said, only quitters or only people who run away quit and are cowards. And you're not a quitter and you're not a coward. Okay, wow. You said, Anthony, what did you say after that? I said, great, where are we gonna go for dinner tonight? And we went and we ate dinner, and that was the last of the conversation. My friend was a very blunt individual. He was very, very direct. He was real in that moment. But let me help you with something. He didn't lose the attributes that we just described earlier. He was still being kind. He was still being patient. Even though you might not understand it in your hearing of the story, with my relationship with him, he was being gentle. See, being real doesn't always mean just being harsh with someone. It might mean being direct, but at the same time, we don't drop the attributes that we're commanded to live. Being real doesn't mean that you live apart from how Jesus lived. Being real doesn't mean that you just get to be blunt in who you are down to your core. It doesn't mean that you get to be arrogant in your sin. Being prideful about who you are or your sin or how you handle things. It doesn't make you honest. It simply makes you self-righteous. And let's be honest, if you're a believer, and you're gonna live in the natural man, and you're gonna do what the natural man does, your old flesh, and you're gonna be harsh, and you're gonna be unkind, and you're gonna be rough, and you're gonna use malice, and you're gonna do all of those things that Pastor Matt talked about and said not to do from the passage of scripture. You're still not being you. You're still not being real because you're not being what Jesus made you to be, what Jesus changed you to be. You're supposed to live what's on the inside. You're supposed to yield to his work as he molds you and shapes you and changes you. So be who he's called you to be. Live the way he's called you to live. Live the way he's designed you to be. Be who you are, redeemed and in Christ, that Christ is your life. And in doing so, be real. The second thing is be relational. Being real should lead you to being relational. So you can't tell me that you're living how Christ has designed you to live, yet you aren't affecting anyone around you. This isn't calling for an introvert to be an extrovert, but it is calling all of us to be real and to be relational. We're called to be relational, to live out the attributes that we've studied in a relational way in the passage. It's saying that we should put off the old flesh and put on what is nurturing to others. That to be patient, to be gentle, to be humble, to have a heart of compassion. That's supposed to affect the world around us. That's supposed to affect other believers around us. Let me say it like this. Your vertical relationship with God ought to come out and affect people in a horizontal way. And when we resist being relational because people bother us, because people upset us, when we do that, we fail to live the way that we have been designed. We fail to live the way we've been called to live. Third one is this: be loving. See, when love rules in our lives, it unites all these spiritual virtues so that there's beauty, harmony, indicating a real spiritual maturity. This harmony and spiritual maturity keep the life balanced and growing. I'm telling you, this is necessary for your life, for your home, for your church, for your marriage. Loving isn't something that we just pull out of our back pocket when we want to do something nice, like leaving a tip and we go to a restaurant. No, it's way, way, way more than that. This is necessary for every part of your life, to be loving. It's way more than something that's optional. But we're not done yet. Look at verse number 12 again. So as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved. Look at the first part of the verse. We're chosen of God and loved. We have this tendency of comparing ourselves to one another, and that's not me versus you. You see, we don't succeed because someone else fails. See, the goal of the Christian life is not for me to live better than you. The goal of the Christian life is far more valuable than that. Sadly, so many Christians, they settle for living better than someone they know. They settle for living better than someone that's sitting next to them rather than living like Jesus. And here's why we ought to live everything we've just talked about. Because you're chosen of God, holy and loved. Your standing with him is secure. Your place with him is secure. We studied that in chapter number 1. And we only succeed as we grow with those around us in the image of Jesus Christ. This journey of following Jesus, it's not a solo journey. I don't care how spiritual you think you are. I don't care how mature you think you are in Jesus. We are supposed to grow together. That's the beauty of what the church is. The church is not a place that you attend. The church is a place that you belong. And we succeed as a church when we grow together with those around us. Not simply in the mission of the church or the mission statement of the church or the culture of the church. No, when we grow to the image of Jesus Christ. That's what we're supposed to look like. And what if you and I grow together and we grow a heart of compassion and patience and our meekness, humility? We start to look more like Jesus. And this world around us doesn't see Northwest. And it doesn't see you and it doesn't see me. when they experience love and forgiveness from us, they don't see Northwest, they don't see you, they don't see me. I pray what they see is Jesus. Because the putting off and the putting on isn't just changing the outside. It's the inside changing. And it's working its way through to the outside, and we're putting off all of the old things that are evil, and we're putting on all of these things that Jesus commands us to, that we don't have to work in and of ourselves to do, but that as we yield to him, he does this work in us and through us. And that as we walk this earth, as we follow him, that people don't see you and they don't see me, that they see him. That he would be magnified in your life and in my life. That our lives together as a church body would magnify the name of Jesus. This is what it's all about. The putting on and the putting off isn't just how you interact with each other. It's that everybody around you and everybody around us as a church doesn't see us, but that they see Jesus. And this is the amazing thing that's happening in this letter, is the Apostle Paul is taking them away from false teaching and false doctrine, and he's pulling them over to the truth, and he's showing them their mission, their purpose. It's that people would see Jesus. So what if we decide today to put off the old man and put on who Jesus has designed us to be? I'm gonna tell you what would happen. They wouldn't see you. And thankfully, they wouldn't see me. But what if they saw the Savior that we loved and that we worshiped and we desired to be like? What if that's what they saw? Hey, what if every day as we walked and we talked with others, what if Jesus was magnified? What if he was magnified through you and through me? Why don't you stand with me? We're going to sing. It might be that you sing out. It might be that you just need to talk to the Lord. It might be that you need to have a moment with him. Let's lift our voices.